Hello and welcome to another movie review on HSG, of course, and this particular flick, called The Discovery from 2017, is a movie with some middling scores. Mostly negative. And although I can certainly understand some of the issues that those critics have, I do think that a number of them, the majority of them in fact, are too harsh on this movie. And I'm going to get into why, because I think it's very important to talk about this. Not just when it comes to this movie, but others too. And it actually ties in very specifically with the way that I review movies, and why, for me as a critic, this movie works, where for others it might not. Now, I would not say that this is one of my favourite movies, or like a top 10 anything, but there's enough in this movie to keep me interested, and for me to recommend watching it at least once. And I'm going to get into why, and surprisingly, there's not really any spoilers in that section of my recommendation. Now, the essential plot revolves around the very impressive cast of Robert Redford. You cast Robert Redford when you need somebody with gravitas who people trust. So you put him in this kind of role and he's going to work. Now, technically, he's more of a supporting character. He's not the lead. The lead is actually played by Jason Segel and Rooney Mara. He discovers proof of an afterlife on a subatomic level. They don't know where people go, but they know that people go. And as it probably would in real life, it causes a mass slew of people killing themselves to get there, for a variety of reasons. We then go a little bit forward in time, and Jason Segel, who plays his son, decides to go and visit his dad, and he's not really on board for this, because partially of the effect that it's had on so many people's lives. And he meets a woman played by Rooney Mara who is troubled. And basically this, not three-way relationship, but relationship potentially developing between Segel and Rooney Mara, and with his dad being this kind of opposing ideal to what he believes is right and wrong, and what his dad believes is right and wrong, forms the basis of the story. Now, the concept of this film, I think, is more than capable enough of carrying a movie. I think the pacing is what lets it down. There are some scenes where a lot happens very quickly, and some of it is almost skipped over. Then there are other scenes which are almost pointless. They're dragged out, they're far too long, and as I've said before, I'm a fan of long movies that take their time, so it's not an attention span problem, it's a pacing problem. I believe that on a technical level, this movie has an issue with the pacing. Now, the reason why I would actually recommend checking this one out, even if I myself will probably never watch it again, chances are, is because, and this is what I was referencing earlier on, because of the type of person I am, because of the type of critic I am when it comes to movies, I am a creative viewer. I'm not a passive viewer. The vast majority of movie-going audiences are passive viewers. Hence, critics cater to that. They cater to somebody who purely wants entertainment. Not, the kind of person who goes into a movie and looks at the filmmaking. You almost don't even notice that as a passive viewer. You're just along for the ride and you figure out whether you like the movie or not. You don't think about the sound mixing or the editing or something like that. But for somebody like me, and like some of you who maybe is an aspiring filmmaker, maybe you are already a filmmaker, maybe already an author, whatever the case may be, that is the kind of recommendation that I would make. Because does this movie stick the landing and pull off the concept? Not in all ways, no. I believe that it actually did end strong. I enjoyed the ending, and I did find it an emotional movie, actually. But I believe it's more so the middle section of the film wherein the pacing could have been tightened up a lot, and it would have improved the overall experience. So in other words, would I recommend this movie to somebody who just wants entertainment? Not necessarily. Would I, on the other hand, recommend it to someone who can appreciate all of the good aspects of its filmmaking? Yes. The casting is good, the location is interesting, the concept is interesting, even the way it's carried out for the most part, I think is interesting enough to carry the film. It really is just the pacing for me. It's the only primary issue that I have. Now, to get into spoiler talk, the only thing that I really wanted to touch on was probably the ending, because I believe the ending was actually done well. I think that if you'd have let the ending play out more, it would have answered too much. And if you'd have ended it sooner, it wouldn't have been emotionally satisfying. Because I actually did find this movie emotionally satisfying. I thought that the chemistry between Segel and Mara was good. I thought that Robert Redford was actually fine in the movie. You know, you cast him to be Robert Redford. He doesn't even need to act that much anymore. He basically just plays himself. But I thought that their chemistry was good, because obviously Siegel is typically more of a comedic actor, at least in the flicks that I've seen him in. And I think he played Sirius better. I preferred him in this role than in a comedic one. Rooney Mara, she was good. She doesn't have a huge amount to do as far as emotional range, and that's kind of the point, but I liked the relationship that they had. It was playful. They kind of had a realistic chemistry, and I liked it. I liked the payoff at the end. When he suddenly has that realization of who she is, I liked it. I did like how the movie wrapped up, and I think it did stick the landing. I think that the only issue is, as I already mentioned, that pacing. The pacing, I'm not exactly sure where I would say that the pacing issues start and end, but I don't find really much of a pacing issue with the end of the movie, because time is of the essence at the end, so it kind of needs to be faster. But that faster pacing at the end kind of contrasts even more with the rest of the movie. So the middle section where you start to get into, you know, the brother playing his weird little guitar in front of the cultists, which is essentially what they are. And even though Robert Redford, of course, acknowledges that it's BS most of the time, it still is a weird situation. And to be honest with you, even though I see what they were going for, I don't think you really needed any of that compound to be in the movie. Because ultimately, none of those characters actually were relevant to the film at all. So the way that I might have made this movie, for instance, which is a very pretentious thing to say, I know, but let's just go with it. The way that I would have made this concept is I would have probably still had Siegel, Mara, Redford do away with everyone else except for the brother, who I don't recall his name at the moment, but he's also a fantastic actor, comedic, serious, everything in between. But none of those other people were necessary. Imagine if the movie had, instead of going to the admittedly very nice compound that they're on, it's a beautiful place, but imagine if instead of that, it was just his dad's home, and it was in the garage, or in the garden shed. It would have made the story that much more personal, and I think that actually would have benefited the film even more, because ultimately, the movie is a very personal story. That's the whole point. You know, his dad's work revolving around the mother. This idea of people's reliving life being based around mistakes that they wish they could have done differently. That's a great concept. It is a cool concept for an afterlife. It's certainly one of the more interesting options. That's great. But when the movie has that kind of a personal payoff, why make it so big? So although, as I said, my only issue is the pacing, I do believe there are certainly other things that could have been done better. And this is kind of what I mean about recommending the movie. Do I love this film? No. But I like enough things about it to start thinking in my own mind, how would I have done that? So this is almost the kind of movie where I think it's good to watch it if you are a budding filmmaker or a writer, or even if you just have an interest in how things are done and how a story is crafted well, because you don't need to watch the best of everything to understand how to be good. You need to watch some of the rest of everything as well. Something which isn't necessarily, bottom of the barrel, but something which has some great ideas, some cool details, some good filmmaking aspects. But then when it comes together, maybe just falls a little bit short of the mark or does a couple of things that weren't quite satisfactory. To me, you as a creative viewer rather than a passive viewer can actually learn a lot from a movie like that. And that's one of the main reasons why I enjoyed it. I did find the movie emotional. I really enjoyed the relationship that they developed. I did find it sad toward the end, and it paid off for me. It really is just the pacing. I would have liked it to have been a much smaller story. So, of course, I'd love to hear your thoughts down below. Do you agree with my points? Do you disagree? Do you maybe have additional issues on top of that for you? Tell me about it down below. And, of course, stick around on the channel for more. But for now, as always, thanks for watching.